That's why everybody was so surprised when all of a sudden it just fell.
Now, the other thing, too, we presume it has been burning for some time. As you indicated, there was nobody inside, and we hope no danger to anybody when it went down.
Well, that's the thing is that when number two went down, I don't think.
The U.S. Geological Survey website provides us with a definition of a pyroclastic flow as a ground-hugging avalanche of hot gas and debris.
Huge buildings that have been here so long would actually just fall, and that's what happened. They just crumbled.
The rising gas chimney is clearly visible in this photo of the North Tower implosion with pyroclastic flows between buildings. The cauliflower shape of the debris clouds is a telltale sign of pyroclastic flows generated by massive explosions typical of volcanic eruptions and controlled demolitions.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Ben. That is the second building that has gone down. It came out like a plume of smoke, like a banana unpeeling, plumes of smoke coming out, and then absolutely nothing. And now where there were two huge buildings, two huge towers, there is now nothing.
A pyroclastic surge can even flow over water as hot gases carry dust created by explosive energy. Here, the South Tower implosion creates a pyroclastic surge moving out over the Hudson River.
The World Trade Center has just crumbled, collapsed in a pile of dust. This approximately less than an hour after it was hit by an aircraft.
The second building completely down.
People starting to run away from the scene, and I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. Looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself, and another big, huge plume of gray and white smoke shooting up into the air, and then more of the smoke billowing up the street here.
Once again, our definition of a pyroclastic flow. Hot gases carrying dust and debris flow along the ground with a fluid motion. It requires explosive energy to generate the necessary heat, dust, and debris. Turbulence and fluidization of debris are characteristic.
Indeed, until September 11th only volcanic eruptions and high explosives have been able to achieve this pulverizing of material into a pyroclastic flow.
And I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. Looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself, and another big, huge plume of gray and white smoke shooting up into the air, and then more of the smoke billowing up the street here.
Once again, our definition of a pyroclastic flow. Hot gases carrying dust and debris flow along the ground with a fluid motion. It requires explosive energy to generate the necessary heat, dust, and debris. Turbulence and fluidization of debris are characteristic.
Evidently the hundreds of firemen and policemen and citizens and reporters at Ground Zero were all mistaken about all of the huge explosions they saw, heard, felt, and then described.
We heard another explosion. This is, the first explosion, and there was a second explosion in the same building. There were two explosions.
Okay. Federal, and they do believe that there was some sort of explosive device.
We received word of the possibility of a secondary device, that is another bomb going off. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion, which he said there was another explosion that took place.
But a big explosion happened?
One and then the other. Some say after secondary explosions.
There were two or three similar huge explosions.
Big explosion.
We just witnessed some kind of secondary follow-up explosion.
We understand now there has been a secondary explosion on Tower 2.
There was another major explosion.
An explosion. For a moment, we heard a big explosion coming down.
Huge explosion that we all heard and felt.
I heard a second explosion.
John, just seconds ago there was a huge explosion and
Explosions that took place in and around the towers just before and while the towers were collapsing.
What do we do?
made it outside. We made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, it started popping out.
It was like, it was if it had detonated.
Detonated.
Planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down.
Once again, our president fixed this little problem by placing a gag order on government city and county employees who were at the scene. Make no mistake about it, people from all over the country are gagging right now. Those who have been ordered to, and those who have not. They want you to ignore the fact that no steel frame skyscraper had ever collapsed due to fire until September 11th, when suddenly 3 steel frame skyscrapers collapsed within hours of each other.
Almost looks like one of those planned implosions. And so now as we stand here, both towers, the tops of both.
You didn't know about the third one, did you?
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the 3rd time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
They want you to ignore other steel frame skyscrapers that had fires burning in them that were much hotter and burned many hours longer, completely gutting the entire building. Yet when the smoke cleared, there was no collapse or any stack of floors from a pancake experience. They want you to believe them when they tell you that 47 separate steel columns which made up the core of the building was actually a hollow steel shaft. They hope you don't understand that even given their insulting pancake theory, there should have been these massive support columns sticking hundreds of feet up into the air, but somehow these massive columns were also shredded into pieces 30 feet or less, conveniently ready to be loaded onto trucks.
The other problem is what happened to the 47 massive steel columns
On the shafts formed by the core columns.
that constituted the core of each of these twin towers. They were the weight-bearing structures of each tower. Those 47, even if the pancake theory were true, those 47 steel beams should have been sticking up at least several hundred feet into the air. Just like the old phonographs, where sometimes the 78 records would collapse, but the spindle's still sticking up in the air. You should have had 47 spindles still sticking up in the air. Well, what did the 9/11 Commission report do about that problem? It avoided the problem incredibly by simply denying the existence of these columns.
Massive steel beams for the core columns.
Even though those columns, I'm not making this up. These columns were the unique feature of these towers when they were first built. So, the Commission report, after saying falsely that most of the weight of each tower was borne by the steel columns in its exterior walls, this supposedly authoritative report said the interior core of the buildings was a hollow steel shaft in which elevators and stairwells were grouped. Such a desperate lie is a sure sign of a cover-up.
As the south tower begins to fall, we can see a dark smoke collapse zone at the top and the corner structure intact. A light-colored dust detonation zone quickly progresses down the side of the tower while the corner structure remains intact. Within 3 seconds, the detonation zone has become roughly 30 stories tall, with the dark smoke collapse zone far above.
You have 2 110-story office buildings. You don't find a desk. You don't find a chair. You don't find a telephone, a computer. The biggest piece of a telephone I found was half of the keypad, and it was about this big. The building collapsed to dust.
No. There were no explosions at the World Trade Center, gushes the official conspiracy theory. There were no bombs in the buildings. It was refined kerosene burning for 102 and 56 minutes in the north and south towers respectively. You see, what happened was, the steel, it got hot, because, well, you know, it was a lot of jet fuel in there burning, and the hot fire got hotter. That central core was hit real hard, probably made the hot fire even hotter. All at the same time, those cheap lightweight floor trusses the perimeter was actually the building's support because of those winds that blow hard. Then it heated enough so well, the fire was really hot, and these are really big and really heavy buildings, so when the lightweight steel trusses were exposed so long to the fire, well, yes, of course. It has to turn the concrete to powder, and the stuff on the steel fell off, so without the fireproofing material, well, you know, it probably fell off. Lots of the stuff fell off, so the steel got hot, so it must have fell off. So it was inevitable, because it's clear that nothing could have survived those hot jet fuel fires. You know, it was jet fuel burning in there, really hot jet fuel, and furniture and whatnot. Lots of hot burning stuff was burning in there real hot. It's all in the 911 Commission report. Isn't it obvious? Why do you ask? And there you have it. Initial collapse always leads to total collapse in big steel frame buildings with floor trusses. No bombs anywhere in any of the buildings. So when Larry Silverstein, lease owner of WTC, told PBS that they blew up Building 7, he was also hallucinating, or he misspoke, or it wasn't really him, or he didn't mean what he said, or rhetoric.
Getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such a terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Indeed, those raging fires in those black holes carved out by the airplanes heated the trusses evenly enough and hot enough to where hundreds of beams gave at the same exact moment, thus causing total collapse via the pancake theory. Forget about thermal conductivity, because it's not even mentioned in the 911 Commission report. If you know anything about thermal conductivity in steel, then you are most likely incredibly insulted by the fire theory. If you do not know anything about thermal conductivity in steel, ask a welder or a steel worker how long it would take to heat the entire skeleton of the building up. Also ask them why they bother with electric arcs and bottled oxygen to cut steel when a few gallons of jet fuel will do the trick. They don't want you to ask them where a photo can be seen showing this stack of floors, otherwise you may begin to understand that those floors were made up of a lightweight concrete and they were blown to smithereens, causing the volcanic-like clouds otherwise known as a pyroclastic flow.
People starting to run away from the scene, and I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. Looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself, and another big, huge plume of gray and white smoke shooting up into the air, and then more of the smoke billowing up the street here.
Once again, our definition of a pyroclastic flow. Hot gases carrying dust and debris flow along the ground with a fluid motion. It requires explosive energy to generate the necessary heat, dust, and debris. Turbulence and fluidization of debris are characteristic.
They hope you do not see the picture of the woman standing on the edge of the tower where the airplane entered the building, and after the fire had died down, After all,